By 2050, 68% of the global population will live in cities. What comes with this? Crowded spaces, air pollution, the urban heat island effect. As urban areas get more crowded, how can we ensure that city residents maintain healthy lives? Go outside and smell the fresh air. Take a walk with your dog in the park, tree cover, nature, green space. Green space has probably improved your quality of life. What is green space? Parks, nature trails, playgrounds, green rooftops, gardens. These are outdoor areas covered with vegetation that are accessible to the public. A growing body of research shows that green spaces improve both our mental and physical health.
The physical health basically is you're provided a better air to breathe. But I also see a mental health and well-being to having the green spaces and trees. It's really calming and relaxing to have the deer, the raccoons, the possums, the rabbits, and all of that kind of roaming through. And we also want to provide a home.
The problem is, not everyone has equal access to these spaces. Durham, North Carolina, is an example of where tree cover and green space access is not equal among all communities. Within Durham, Merrick Moore community has been fighting to protect its green space and advocate for more safe parks and spaces for its people. Benita Green, a member of the Merrick Moore community, is a local leader who works with nonprofit organizations like Trees Durham and has spoken at City Council to defend their green space.
My name is Benita Green, and I live in the Merrick Moore community. We have a lot of trees. Okay, we have a lot of trees, but we are also a hot spot when you look at the heat maps because we're bordered by industrial zones. My whole thing with what we want to do here is to preserve as much of the green space as possible because we are a low-income area.
BIPOC communities are 3 times as likely as white Americans to live in nature-deprived areas. The right to breathe clean air, take a healing walk in a neighborhood park, and just appreciate nature and its beauty are rights that all humans deserve, regardless of age, gender, socioeconomic status, and any other factors. Yet, historic and systemic inequities have reserved these rights for those inhabiting white, affluent neighborhoods. Access to green space is a right, and that has become a privilege. For those of us who have been fortunate enough to be surrounded by green space and trees, we take for granted what so many families and communities have been restricted from.
My kind of fight for green space within my community is twofold. Understanding that, Black communities kind of were placed in not the best areas, back in the day. And then also, because my community is so small, I didn't want gentrification to really push us out.
The inequities in green space access for BIPOC communities is a perfect example of how racist policies from the past are still affecting minorities now.
A group of folks went around and drew green lines around neighborhoods that were white and red lines around neighborhoods that were Black, and then different colors around transition neighborhoods. And basically and so they made these maps of cities based on race. And these ratings were used to guide money for homeownership. So if you lived in an A neighborhood or a white neighborhood explicitly, you could get money for home loans, which then started this generational wealth building. And if you lived in a Black neighborhood or a D neighborhood, a transitional neighborhood, you weren't able to get any loan from homes, so you were stuck renting. The neighborhoods that got these investments were often stable. They often had high wealth in general. And so they started in Durham forming neighborhood associations like the Trinity Neighborhood Association, Duke Park Association, and they started advocating for trees in the 1920s and 30s. And so these neighborhoods had the time, they had the money, they had the resources to start planting trees all in their neighborhoods. And so they actually using a combination of city people, of volunteers, garden groups, and federal funds, planted these willow oaks and other big oaks all around the neighborhoods where they lived, the A and B neighborhoods. The D neighborhoods, the Black neighborhoods, didn't have that same wealth resources. Sometimes they didn't even have space because the houses were sort of built really close together. There weren't the yards. There were sort of shacks sometimes built right next to each other. And so not only did they not have the time or the money to plant, they didn't always have the space to plant, and there was no city investment in the plantings.
The older Black community has a different relationship with nature than most white people do.
Because of how intertwined green space access is to history and systemic inequities, it seems overwhelming to address this issue. However, through the various individuals we spoke with, many pointed to the possibility of solutions through community activism, engagement, and storytelling.
I think one of the big problems that Durham has is you have different neighborhoods that are trying to fight their own fight instead of coming together and forming a more holistic group. And then you have a better chance of, winning your argument than if you're just by yourself. It was important to have not just my voice, but other people's voices who have experienced things, because people think if it's not on my block, then I don't really care. So I try to just be in as many spaces as possible. I try to share the story of Merritt Moore as much as possible, the history and the things that we're dealing with and facing. And to make people care.